Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, literally planet-wide thought experiment. We are asking the absolute ultimate question. What if every single country on Earth just became one single country? So picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning, right? You rub the sleep out of your eyes, reach over for your phone on the nightstand, and you see this exact breaking news notification pop up on your screen. Every country on Earth has united into one giant nation. Just like that, the reality we know is completely flipped overnight. India, the US, China, Japan, Brazil, Australia. Every single separate nation you've ever memorized on a globe is suddenly part of one massive country. No separate governments. I know, it sounds totally unbelievable, right? But we're going to look really closely at what would actually happen if this hit us tomorrow. Would it bring about this era of unprecedented world peace? Or would it trigger the biggest disaster in human history? Okay, so what's the very first thing you'd notice? The complete and total erasure of all 195 international borders. Millions of checkpoints across the globe, gone, just shut down forever. Think about the physical, everyday reality of that for a second. No passports, no visas. You could literally jump in your car in India and simply drive all the way to Europe without ever hitting an immigration booth. Flying from Delhi to New York would feel exactly the same as taking a quick domestic flight right now. Tourism would absolutely skyrocket. Because, well, travel would be entirely frictionless. Families separated by oceans and mountains of red tape could finally reunite without a second thought. For a lot of people, life would instantly become beautifully simple. But, as you might guess, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. All right, let's dive into this. Because while planning a vacation suddenly gets super easy, our first really monumental shift is all about the numbers. We're talking about the new global economy. A brand new world government would have to quickly roll out a single global currency. Over 180 different currencies would just vanish overnight. So, no more worrying about exchange rates for dollars, rupees, euros, or yen. Everybody, everywhere, uses the exact same cash. Suddenly, buying a product from literally the opposite side of the planet is as easy as walking down and buying milk from your local corner store. But here's the catch. This new economic reality would create a massive divide between the winners and the losers. On one hand, we'd see this utopian boom for Amazon-style megacorporations. With one currency and zero borders, global trade becomes insanely fast, and online shopping gets simpler than ever before. Tech spreads like wildfire, and in a lot of places, things actually get cheaper. But there's a deeply dystopian flip side. Your local mom-and-pop store would suddenly be fighting for its life against these globe-spanning giants. Plus, regions that used to have weaker economies, they might get hit with severe inflation and crazy price hikes. So you'd have some people getting phenomenally wealthy, while others would struggle incredibly hard just to keep their heads above water, as old industries die out and new ones take over. Let's shift gears for a second and look at geopolitics, and honestly, a much heavier question. Would wars finally end? It's a fascinating thing to think about, isn't it? If there is literally only one country on the entire planet, well, who exactly fights who? The immediate, undeniable win here is that traditional international wars would just vanish. They'd completely disappear because, simply put, nations are no longer competing against each other for dominance. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate trade-off of a united globe. Think about the global military budget. We're talking roughly $2.4 trillion spent on weapons to fight our neighbors. All of that money could instantly be pumped into schools, hospitals, scientific research, and grand projects like exploring space, which sounds absolutely amazing. But peace isn't automatically guaranteed just because you erase a line on a map. People are still going to disagree. The harsh reality is that human conflict would just move indoors. Fights would absolutely continue over politics, over scarce resources, religion, and culture. The wars wouldn't vanish, they just mutate into internal conflicts happening inside this one giant country rather than between separate ones. Which brings us to what might be the absolute logistical nightmare of this whole scenario: governing humanity. 8 billion. Over 8 billion people. Just try to wrap your head around organizing, governing, and managing the daily lives of that many individuals under one single system. The scale of this is, frankly, almost beyond human comprehension. When you have 8 billion people, how do you even pick a leader? Would there be just one single president for the entire Earth? One giant parliament making all the decisions? One constitution? One legal system for everybody? Just imagine the sheer length of that presidential ballot. Every single choice made by this government would have ripple effects across the entire planet. The complexity of finding a system that everybody actually agrees on is just staggering. To really ground this, let's look at a specific physical example. Running one giant country means you're making laws for incredibly diverse environments. A law or regulation that makes perfect sense for the climate and infrastructure of, say, snowy Canada, well, it might make absolutely zero sense when you try to apply it to the deserts of Africa or the dense forests of South America. Trying to force a one-size-fits-all policy onto a planet with such extreme geographical and environmental differences would be remarkably difficult. Honestly, it might be flat out impossible. But let's step away from the nightmare of global bureaucracy for a minute and look at some of the more optimistic possibilities of our little thought experiment. Let's talk about culture and the environment.
Because importantly, one country definitely does not mean one single culture. People would absolutely still celebrate Diwali, Christmas, Eid, Lunar New Year, and hundreds of other local festivals. Food, music, clothing, and all those ancient traditions would continue to make every single region totally unique. Actually, what's really cool to think about is that these cultural traditions might spread even faster, as people travel freely across the world without borders stopping them, sharing meals and music. Human diversity wouldn't fade away. It would likely remain and maybe even get stronger as one of Earth's absolute greatest assets.
And that sense of unity? It could translate directly to the health of the planet itself. Instead of hundreds of different countries constantly arguing over treaties and pointing fingers at each other, everyone could finally work towards shared environmental goals to fight climate change. Huge, large-scale projects to clean up ocean pollution could be knocked out much faster with unified funding and resources, and deforestation could be met with a laser-focused global push for clean energy. But, and this is a big but, there is a huge warning label attached to this. Success in these areas still strictly requires total human cooperation. Even if there's only one country on paper, it literally cannot solve these existential problems if the people inside it refuse to actually work together. Which means, when you strip it all away, the global economy, the single currency, the erased borders, those aren't actually our biggest hurdles. No, we face the ultimate human challenge. So the crucial point is this. The biggest problem wouldn't be the money. It wouldn't be the borders. It would be us. It would be people. We have billions of humans who speak completely different languages, they follow fundamentally different traditions, they hold deeply different spiritual and moral beliefs, and perhaps most importantly, they have vastly different ideas about how society itself should actually operate. These are the core friction points of human nature. They're deeply rooted differences that you can't just erase by declaring everyone part of the same team. Let's be real here. Good luck trying to get the entire planet to agree on a single global pizza topping, let alone a unified philosophy of life. And that brings us to the core philosophical hurdle of this entire scenario. Keeping 8 billion vastly different people moving in the exact same direction without fracturing apart, that would be, without a doubt, the ultimate challenge of our history. So we come back to you. We've looked at the utopian promises of frictionless travel, booming global economies, and shared environmental goals. But we've also looked at the absolute logistical nightmares of governing 8 billion people and the deep, inescapable reality of human conflict. So, weigh it out. Weigh the utopian promises against those logistical nightmares and decide for yourself. If you could press a button to erase every border on Earth tomorrow, would you?